With a steady hand, President Trump raised the photograph, the light catching the glossy finish. A woman in the front row gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as the image on the giant screen became clear. That's, that's Rachel Maddow, someone whispered, and a tidal wave of murmurs crashed through the stunned silence of the auditorium. The air in the university auditorium was thick with a carefully manufactured tension. It was a CNN presidential town hall, and the network had spared no expense. The lighting was dramatic. The set was a sleek blend of steel and blue-tinted glass, and the hand-picked audience was primed for a showdown. President Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States, sat on a lone stool, a picture of calm in the center of a media-built storm. For weeks, the liberal press, led by the endlessly smug Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, had been hammering a single narrative. Trump's new American heartland economic policies were a disaster for the working class. Night after night, Maddow would present skewed charts and feature carefully edited interviews with people who claimed to have lost everything. It was a campaign of demoralization, designed to break the spirit of the American people. Tonight was meant to be the grand finale. The moderator, a veteran journalist known for his confrontational style, turned to a woman in the third row. "We have a question now from Sarah Miller," he announced, his voice oozing with theatrical sympathy. Sarah is a single mother and a small business owner from just outside Philadelphia. Sarah, please. A woman with tired eyes and a well-rehearsed tremble in her voice stood up. She clutched the microphone as if it were a lifeline. "Mr. President," she began, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. I owned a small bakery. It was my dream. I poured my life savings into it. For 3 years, we were the heart of our little town." She paused, taking a shaky breath. The camera zoomed in, capturing a single tear rolling down her cheek. The audience leaned forward, captivated. "But since your American Heartland plan, everything has changed," she continued, her voice rising with indignation. "The costs went up. My customers lost their jobs. Last month, I had to close my doors forever. My dream is dead." She looked directly at him, her eyes pleading yet accusatory. "Mr. President, you promised to fight for people like me, but your policies destroyed me. What do you have to say to the families like mine that you've left with nothing?" A wave of sorrowful murmurs swept through the audience. A woman in the back sniffled loudly. On the screen, the chyron read, "A mother's dream, a president's failure." It was the perfect ambush. The moderator looked at Trump, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. He expected anger, a defensive tirade. The Trump the media had created. He got something else entirely. President Trump didn't bristle. He didn't lash out. He simply listened, his expression thoughtful, almost serene. When she finished, he nodded slowly. The silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable. "Sarah," he said finally, his voice calm and steady, cutting through the heavy atmosphere. "Thank you for your question. That's a powerful and heartbreaking story." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. Then he tilted his head slightly. "It's also a very familiar one," he continued, a new edge to his voice, sharp and precise. "You look very familiar, Sarah. Tell me, is your aunt still enjoying her corner office at 30 Rockefeller Plaza?" The question landed like a grenade. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Sarah's face, which had been a mask of tragic victimhood, froze. Her eyes darted from Trump to the moderator, raw panic replacing the practiced sorrow. The crowd began to murmur, a low, confused hum that quickly grew into a buzz of suspicion. People turned to each other, whispering. 30 Rock? Isn't that... Wait, who is her aunt? The moderator, completely wrong-footed, stammered. Mr. President, that's an inappropriate and personal attack. Please, address Miss Miller's very real economic concerns. Trump ignored him, his gaze locked on Sarah. It's a simple question. He pressed, his voice like steel. You came here to ask me a question in front of the nation. Surely you can answer one in return. How is your aunt, Rachel Maddow? The name dropped, and chaos erupted. Shouts echoed through the auditorium. The audience was on its feet, some pointing at Sarah, others looking at the stage in disbelief. Sarah Miller, or whatever her real name was pale, her facade shattered. She looked like a cornered animal. This was the first blow in the president's emotional avalanche. He wasn't just refuting a claim, he was exposing a conspiracy. I I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but her denial was weak, pathetic. You don't? Trump replied, his voice laced with pity. He reached into his jacket pocket. He didn't pull out a policy paper or a chart. He pulled out a folded letter. My office received a letter last week, the president explained, his voice resonating with sincerity. It was from a man in your hometown, a real small business owner. He runs a hardware store, and he was worried about you. The audience fell silent again, hanging on every word. He wrote that a woman, who he now recognizes as you, came into his store a month ago. Trump continued, unfolding the letter. He said you weren't buying supplies for a bakery. You were asking him and other shop owners if they would be willing to go on television to talk about how my policies had hurt them. He said a producer from a major news network was offering to pay for their time. The president held up the letter. He said he refused. He said, our town is struggling, but we are not for sale. He said he was writing to me because he was afraid the media was coming to his town not to report the truth, but to create a lie. A man in the front row, wearing a Made in the USA cap, shot to his feet. That's right, he boomed. They don't care about us. The sentiment spread like wildfire. The audience wasn't just watching a show anymore. They were a part of it. They were the people being mocked, the people whose struggles were being twisted into a political weapon. The president let the anger build for a moment before delivering the final, devastating blow. But you know, he said, folding the letter and placing it back in his pocket. A letter can be dismissed. A story can be spun. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. He nodded to his aide off stage. A moment later, a massive image flashed onto the giant screen behind him. It was a candid holiday photo. A group of people smiling around a lavishly decorated Christmas tree. In the center, her arm draped warmly around the struggling single mother, Sarah, was Rachel Maddow. They were laughing, holding champagne flutes. It wasn't a picture of a concerned journalist and a downtrodden victim. It was a picture of an aunt and her niece at a family party. The auditorium exploded. The sound was deafening, a roar of outrage, betrayal, and vindication. People were pointing at the screen, then at the trembling woman in the aisle, then back at the triumphant figure on the stage. Sarah, exposed and humiliated, dropped the microphone and pushed her way through the furious crowd, her face hidden in her hands as she fled the room. The moderator stood speechless, his face ashen. His ambush hadn't just failed. It had backfired spectacularly, live, in front of millions. President Trump waited for the noise to subside, a somber look on his face. He hadn't gloated. He had simply revealed the truth, piece by painful piece. He then pivoted, turning the media's weapon back on them with devastating force. He spoke not to the disgraced moderator, but directly to the cameras, directly to the American people. What you just saw is the sickness at the heart of our country. He began, his voice ringing with moral authority. They don't want to help the struggling. They want to use the struggling. They will find a person's pain, put a microphone in their face, and twist it into a weapon to be used against their own country. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. This was never about a bakery in Pennsylvania. This was about a narrative, cooked up in a boardroom in New York City, to make you feel hopeless, to make you believe that your country is failing, that your neighbors are your enemies, and that your president doesn't care. He gestured toward the empty space where Sarah had stood. But we are not their props. We are not their pawns. He then announced the new small business tax credit, a real policy for real people, turning the fake confrontation into a moment of genuine hope. The applause was thunderous, a genuine outpouring of respect and gratitude. He held up the photo one last time, not in anger, but in sorrow. They don't want to report the news anymore. They want to be the news. He declared, his voice firm. The room fell silent for his final, unforgettable line. But I'm the president, and the only family business I care about is the American family. Asterisk. The mic drop moment landed with the force of a physical blow. The crowd erupted, a sustained roaring ovation that shook the very foundations of the hall. It was more than applause. It was a declaration. The truth had won. The hero had stood his ground, not with anger, but with intelligence, strength, and an unwavering faith in the people he served. What do you think is more damaging to a country? A politician's bad policy, or a media that deliberately deceives its own people? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of truth in the face of power.